Oh shoot. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Shoot. Hold on. I want to do something. Okay, I'm gonna have to edit this out. I screwed up. Hey guys, it's Eric with the Miller Park Minute, where we're throwing strikes and getting likes, hitting dingers, and getting listeners. Back again with another episode, a little special day off edition. So we're just talking Brew Crew on the day off. There's no good, bad, and ugly today because, well, there's nothing really to be good, bad, and ugly. So we do have a special guest in today's episode. So we're going to go through and just do a little something different. Today. This gentleman approached me with an idea, and I said, sure, let's do it. And he wanted to be on the show. He's a longtime listener, good friend, plays fantasy baseball like a champ, always one that's really tough to beat, and an OG of the Miller Park Minute YouTube channel. We appreciate him. Just an all-around great guy. And his name is Richard. He is from La Crosse. Welcome
Hello.
to the Miller Park Minute, Richard. How you doing?
How we doing?
Good.
Okay.
So, yeah, you are a fan from La Crosse. We were just kind of chit-chatting off air. How long have you been following the crew now?
Since I was since I was 4.
Oh, long.
Which I'm 40. I'm 49 now. So.
All right. I didn't know if you wanted to give out your age, so I didn't want to be like.
No, I'm okay with it. Yeah. Heck. Yeah. And I remember actually going to a game in 1982 when the playoffs for the World Series. So. Yeah, I go back, and when I was a kid, my grandma gave me a book of all the Brewers players in little cards, kind of like baseball cards, but they were actually on kind of like a page of a book kind of paper.
Okay.
And they give you stats about every player and all that stuff, and still have it to this day. And I don't know how that thing has lasted as long as it has, but it's my, one of my favorite possessions that I have of a Brewer merchandise. So, so it's been rough during the 80s because after that World Series, it was just like, you couldn't really do, you wouldn't go around saying I'm a Brewers fan very much because they just weren't that good. And, so this for me lately, the Prince Fielder years, the Brian Braun years, it's been an uptick from what I used to be used to in the 80s. So we'll just say it that way. So.
Well, there were some good years in the 80s, though. I mean, it's not that it was.
Oh, yeah.
Without.
It was overall, though, it was not. I mean, they had, they'd fall just short of what, right. So it was like they never. One of these years we'll get them back to the World Series, and then, well, and hopefully with the way they're playing this year, I'm hoping it's this year, but we'll see.
Right. I definitely think that there's a window for this modern era team, especially with the pitching staff that we have, that is going to more or less be gone at some point here in the near future. You know what I mean? We're gonna lose at least components of it, if not the whole thing.
I see Corbin Burns being gone before too long. I think the Brewers are doing. And no offense to the Brewers management because they know what they're doing. I have no clue. but they're doing him a disservice by, I think, honestly, by not paying him what he should be worth. I mean, and for some reason they do, they know better than I. So I'm not gonna say that they're not doing a job they're supposed to for business wise, but I just see it as a fan. I'm not a big fan of what they're doing to Corbin Burnes lately. So,
right, and I agree with that. I would say, honestly, one. I got a reply from Dom, who I haven't heard from in a while, so I wanted to make sure I spoke to, just answered him back real quick. But yeah, one of the things that I think, this team is obviously our management is obviously upset players. We talked about Lorenzo Kane before we hopped on here. Certain players have left with a bitter taste. And then eventually everything works itself out. Even like look at Paul Molitor. I mean, eventually he showed up to a reunion type thing. But unfortunately, in the time, in the moment right now, it does very much look like we aren't going to see a Corbin Burnes for very long. I'm hoping we can stay good enough to keep him at least through 2024. Stay in the conversation. I think if they're not in the conversation at the end of the year, that could be where it gets scary and where a potential trade scenario would happen.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say it out loud. That's the biggest thing. I'm a diehard Burnes guy, and I don't want to admit.
Oh, I'd love to see them keep him throughout. I'd love to see most of these guys play their whole careers with the Brewers.
Right.
But I just with Burnes, especially after that whole arbitration case, I don't see that happening because I think they burned a bridge that can't be repaired. So it's just one of those things that you could try. It's kind of like, and as much as I hate to say this, it's kind of like what Aaron Rodgers is going through with the Packers. The Packers just want to move on, but they don't. So it's just a whole thing for me. It's just. I'd love to see most of these guys, like Ryan Braun. I'm glad ended up playing his whole career with the Brewers.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Because that's an interesting thing. More and more now, we're not seeing the long-term guys. I mean, Ryan Braun could be the end of the era of long-term players. Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, should have been the franchise quarterback forever. But again, that was something where the franchise pissed him off, and I think a lot of and not that I'm a Packers analyst, whatever you want to call it, but I think one of the big things with that is they never really put anything around Favre. They never really went out and did these big splashy free agency moves for Rodgers either, or even drafted. I mean, they drafted a quarterback. So I get the offense and I get the anger. And I think the same could be said with baseball players. I mean, you look at those years of Jeff Jenkins being the best Brewer out there, and they didn't really have a team. There's always kind of been that one superstar that there wasn't a team around. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of a Wisconsin thing a little bit. I mean, you can point to the Bucks and point to was it Ray Allen?
Yeah.
I mean, you can point to a lot of scenarios.
Oh, I get. It's just with any team, it's you gotta really start thinking about, And I understand, for what I've given the Aaron Rodgers example. I always found it kind of weird that the same thing is happening with him that has happened with Brett Favre. Where he went to the Jets. As his first team that he wants to play with. And, he was a backup. It's just, I get it. Business-wise, I am not the most savvy person on the planet. So I can't wrap my head around the business aspect of it. But as a fan, it's just, especially when you want to see, these guys give what they give, and try and bring championships to the city they belong to. You think, they should be, in my personal way, I believe Burns is worth more than maybe a lot of pitchers on that staff right now, in my personal opinion, is that he's worth more than any. I would not say he's on par with Woodruff, because I think Woodruff is probably right now, in my personal opinion, this might be a hot take, but I think Woodruff is the better pitcher, in my honest belief. I think Burns can have days of being really, really good. I think this year especially, he's been a little inconsistent, but that goes with any player that plays professional sports, that they're not going to have days where everything just works for them. But right. Burns this year is kind of for me personally, and no offense to anyone who's a fan, is disappointing to say the least, because he's inconsistent, which he wasn't last year, or he would have like these games where he'll get knocked around and then come back and have a really good game the next game. I'm glad to see it, but just for me, it's just, you got to go out and prove you can be more consistent with your pitching and how you play the game before you get that money. So,
and this is the counter to that, is it's a long season. We got a long stretch ahead. Looks like, from what I watched the podcast today, he was talking, and he seems like he's all better. He went through the day. He did some workouts today. I think the longevity is going to be the thing. Like the long haul of this season, I mean, depending on how much time Woody misses here, because this is Woody's first real throwing type injury. This pectoral injury is not related to Burns throwing. It was because he made a tag play, which then hit him in the butt. But like at the end of the day, like, we'll see. I mean, consistency wise, I think Burns just has more of an appeal because he is that heavy strikeout guy. He's that he's got more of those big characteristics. Freddie Peralta is the kind of the unsung guy in this whole deal, and he does not get enough love for that. So,
but I mean, as a pitching staff, I got to hand it to the Brewers. They have pieces in there that I would have never have thought would have worked. Lauer, Miley, and I know how much you like Wade Miley. But, and just somehow they seem to fit. And I don't get it, but, as I say, I'm just a fan of watching baseball. I'm not a fan of the, the stats and all that stuff of baseball. Sure. I just like just watching baseball. And, I remember when I was a kid, my dad and I would always spend, we'd watch the Brewers games on television every day. We'd sit down and just watch the Brewers games for 9 innings. And that was the time most time I spent with my dad, because my dad was, his job would take him pretty much away from us for days on end. Sure. Because he just, and so we didn't get to spend that time with him. So that Brewer game was always the fun time. And that's why I'm also a Brewers fan. To answer your question of, how long have I been a Brewers fan and why am I a Brewers fan? It's because of the time spent with my dad sitting there watching games and watching him yell at the TV when they do something like a boneheaded play, or it was just, it's just, for me, it's just the memories of, the 82 World Series. I remember those games like it were yesterday, and just, at the time I was only 8 when that happened. So, and it still stands out as probably one of the greatest baseball memories I have, because of the fact that, it was my team. And the Brewers will always be my team, because, even though, like, another highlight of my life has been, being able to go to Ryan Sandberg's last official game as a Cub at Wrigley Field. And it was just amazing to be in that atmosphere where you got to see a game. It was the last game of the season, and
cool.
And just the atmosphere of Wrigley Field. It was standing room only for 4.5 hours. It was the longest game because I have horrendous knees, and standing for an hour is bad. But that was well worth it, and we had a couple people in front of us get like foul balls, and I was so ticked because a lady dropped one in front of me and I didn't grab it quick enough, and I could have, but I didn't even think about what it was, and someone got it before I got there, and it was just so
that's awesome. But I mean, like that's the experience of baseball. Everybody's got those memories, those stories. I was at Ben Sheets' 18 strikeout game. I was at Game 1 of 2021. I was at Game 7 in 2011. I was at Game 5, the Niger Morgan walk-off against the Diamondbacks. T-Plush, baby.
I forgot. I always forget about him until someone brings him up.
I was at CC Sabathia's first game as a Brewer. I was at CC Sabathia's last game as a Brewer.
You got most of the great times covered, don't you?
I'd say from when I was 18 to now, I've seen a lot of Brewers baseball. I mean, they're at one crack now. Mind you, I live an hour away, so at one crack, I did 45 games one season. I on multiple occasions held a 20-game package.
Nice.
I breathe it, man. I really do. And getting 2 games in the first week was great. And now there was kind of a little because of this long road stand, and I'm gonna get back out there. But I don't know what the schedule will bring.
See, I'm honestly lucky because my sister just bought a house in Milwaukee that you could look out the front door and see. I call it Miller Park just because it's in my brain, burned into my brain. American Family Field. You could just look out the front door and see American Family Field. It's like 2 blocks away from her house. We can walk there when we go there for a game. Oh, it is so cool. And, she is such a Brewers fan, so.
That's awesome.
But,
that's great. So you kind of wanted to talk today, and we'll kind of cover some things here as we go along, but you wanted to talk about old Brewers and a little bit of history, which is kind of not my forte as much, but you wanted to lead a discussion. I'm here to have a discussion about some all-time Brewers with you. So let's do it. I'm gonna sit back, relax, and let you kind of talk about some stuff, and I'll chime in my opinions as I see fit.
Okay, so I have the idea that I had was the greatest Brewers of all time, according to just my opinion. Now, mind you, there may be some shaky ones that just have played with, some players that have played with them only for like a season or 2. But so here's my listing. So for catcher, let me just start with the honorable mentions. The ones that didn't quite make the list because there were just bigger people for me than what I could. I didn't want to make the listing like 20 people and then say, this is the guy that for me that is the greatest of all time. But I have Dale Swaim and Ronnie Belliard as my honorable mentions.
All right.
Because Dale Swaim always gets brought up whenever you talk about the Brewers, and it's work. I mean, the guy did more as a Brewer than most, in my personal opinion, did the most things for the Brewers that and isn't as heralded as say some other people on my list. So Ronnie Belliard just for me played the most games. He has some kind of stat. I don't remember the exact stat, but he has like a certain stat that I really admired that probably very few people have done. So going on, my catchers are Ted Simmons and Jonathan Lucroy.
Oh, for sure.
Jonathan Lucroy, I wish they would have brought him back after he left for like one more season of him catching. Because he defined the catcher position for me. So did Ted Simmons, because Ted Simmons was on the 82 team, and he played every day. I mean, the guy very rarely took a day off. And same with Jonathan Lucroy. So
I have to say, I mean, I'm not disappointed with the start there. BJ Surhoff was of that time frame.
Yeah, but and I was trying to figure out if I wanted to put, who I wanted to put on here, and the ones that I always thought of were those two. So that's why, that I put those two. Just to let you know, this will be 80s heavy. This will be really 80s heavy because that's the one I grew up with.
That's your era. So, that's your era. Yeah, I understand.
Yep. My first basemans are Cecil Cooper.
Okay.
And Prince Fielder.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can deny either of those. It's pretty solid.
Especially with what Cecil Cooper brought to the field. I mean, there was another guy who, through the 80s embodied what it meant to be a Brewer. And, it was just one of those things that, I still have some stuff with his face. Like I said, I had that book on it. And, he's on the first page because, but
also honorable mention who the reason I'm honorable mentioning is this George Scott.
AKA and he was a hard one for me because I never saw him actually play baseball. So I didn't know anything about his playing days because he was a little bit when I was just a little kid. So for me, a bunch of these will be just on name, probably more so than anything else.
Right. You know why he gets a special honorable mention from me, who I wasn't alive during his time either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the second game I went to of the season. Actually, the tickets came from George Scott III, who is.
Oh yes, I remember that because you mentioned it on one of your lives. Yeah, yep. So, I remember that because you were taken aback. Yep, I remember watching that because. Yep.
He hooked it up. So honorable mention goes to him for that. All right, let's continue on.
Can't argue with that. Okay, second base, Jim Gantner. And I had a tough time between these next two because I liked them both because they stayed Brewers as long as they could. Ricky Weeks and Mark Loretta. Those I couldn't put one over the other because those two just. Ricky Weeks, I loved watching Ricky Weeks play. I still would, whenever I watch those old games, I always watch them for Ricky Weeks when he used to play. So,
I'm not gonna take any knock out of the hometown boy that lives in Eden, Wisconsin, which is about 15 minutes away from my home here in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So, no disrespect to Mr. Jim Gantner from me. I'd love to. One of these days, so his bar, he had a bar in Eden, and it's closed up now. I was just by it the other day, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to go in there and get Jim to come sit down and chat with me for a podcast. But gonna have to find another avenue for that. I'm gonna have to get in some kind of inside connection there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just most of these brewers for me define what it was like to be a brewer growing. Like most of these define their position because of who they were as a player. Not so much, not so much like I knew them personally. I like a couple of them I knew because I got to meet them when I was a kid. But it's overall, it's just the fact that you can't mention brewers without like mentioning Gantner or Cooper because it's sacrilege to do so because they deserve as much credit as like a Robin Yount or a Paul Molitor, for those teams succeeding. All right, so third base I have Don Money and Paul Molitor. I could not think of another third baseman that was there. Mike Moustakas, but he only how many seasons did he play with the Brewers? 2, something like that. And so my shortstops are JJ Hardy. My shortstops are JJ Hardy and Willie Adames, just because I like watching them both play. So
I love them both. The only other honorable mention that you could throw in there that's kind of utility did shortstop and third base, and had a considerable, surprising number of games in the outfield for the time frame. Would be Bill Hall.
Bill I Hall, had him on my list, and then I remembered I didn't include Paul Molitor, so I crossed him out.
Right, Bill
and
Hall,
put Paul Molitor in. So yeah, I did have Bill Hall because
2002 to 2009, essentially. Then he left and kind of got sent around a little bit, but
yeah, he played with three or four different teams after that. If I remember correctly, something like that. But yeah, and so this is where kind of my knowledge of these players gets a little fuzzy, because a couple of these I never saw actually play, but you can't really just not include them on an all-time Brewers. So for outfield, I have Brian Braun, Lorenzo Cain, Robin Yount, Sixto Lezcano, Hank Aaron, and Darrell Hamilton. That's Darrell Hamilton is the one I think I loved watching the most for the outfield when I was a kid, other than Robin Yount, because he just there was not a time where he didn't come through in the clutch, but I think the one I would have loved to have seen in his prime is Hank Aaron, just because it just goes without saying because he's one of the greatest of all time. So
if I ever get a time machine, let me tell you, that is where I'm going back to.
Please take me with you at that point. So
also, I'm going to be there for 700, 715, anything. I'll just go to all the games in the 700s. Also, honorable mention for infielders. Milwaukee Brewers' very own most winning manager, Craig Counsell.
Oh yes, I always forget it. I always forget him. Well, and I know I shouldn't, because it should just be common sense that you would think that would just. I forget he played with the,
But he played, so it was sporadic because he played with us, then left,
and came back,
and played with us till the end of his career, and then retired. And, so I mean, like, that's one that's like, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, but he could be on the bench of an all-time team. I would put him on the bench. But then again, then who's your all-time manager? I mean, did you do an all-time manager or no?
I did not. And now that I think about it, I would probably say, and this might, for one that I've seen play in my lifetime, Phil Garner.
I get it.
I just think I just think he did a lot with. He did a lot. But yeah, it's just Phil Gardner and that mustache of his just always defined the scrappiness of the Brewers when he was managing. So, but I didn't even think about that because that's the one thing I was trying to think. I was trying to do this in a hurry, so I really didn't. But
you're good, man.
This is
I
where.
was curious.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. But for me, his scrappy teams were just. They still stand out as probably Council is becoming slowly my favorite manager, but overall, as I say, it would have probably been Phil Garner. But now this is where I kind of go a little off the rails because some of these pitchers, I have Teddy Higuera because that was just Don Sutton. I've forgotten he was a Brewer pitcher at one point, but that's just my memory. My memory is not good with these things. But Ben Sheets, you cannot ever say Ben Sheets does not deserve to be on the greatest of all time list. I even put Corbin Burns on there, but he still has a small sample size for his career so far as a Brewer. But winning that Cy Young, definitely helps him there. I had CC Sabathia because that was during the run that Prince Fielder, Ryan Braun, Corey Hart, and all those guys were on. Cal Eldred. And here's the one that people might disagree with me on, but I was a huge fan of this guy as a kid, Jerry Augustine. So those are my pitchers. I had a hard time doing the relief pitching because if I had to pick one out of the 5 I've got, it would be so hard to do because we've had decent relief pitching, and now for me it's just Raleigh Fingers, Trevor Hoffman, Hader, Plesac, and Rodriguez. If you had to choose one of those 5, which one would you choose?
You missed one of my favorites.
Which one?
Two of my favorites. Fetters and John Axford.
Oh, I forgot about Axford. Yep. I forgot about Axford. The Axemen coming. Yep.
That's one thing where we've been rich too. Is if you just look at some of the names, we had Gagne at one point. Dan Kolb was another honorable mention. He was the saves leader before. So we had back-to-back and continuous saves leaders for a period of time. I think Dan Kolb held the record. All right, let's go. Now you got me. Now I'm digging into stats. I don't do this very often, but let's
do it. See, I just would have an extremely hard time really picking out which one of those. I think Raleigh Fingers because Raleigh Fingers, did so much. I have here, he won 3 times the World Series. He was a 7-time All-Star and won the saves. He won 3 times, won the saves championship. How many saves he won with the number of saves in the Major League Baseball? So Trevor Hoffman's kind of hard to, all those 5. Dan Plesac was just interesting pitching wise because he had a weird style of pitching, if I remember, and I haven't seen him in a while. So, but yeah.
So it's kind of a who's who on this list. Now this doesn't break down. But save totals. Obviously, had Hader gotten a little more time with Milwaukee, he would have beat this. But Dan Plesac is the highest at 133. Then it's Josh Hader. Then John Axford at 106. 97 for K-Rod. Woodman had 79. Fetters had 79. Derek Turnbow, who we didn't mention yet. Dan Kolb. Ken Sanders. Doug Henry. Francisco Cordero.
God, I forgot about Francisco Cordero. And there are a lot of relievers. Those relievers, the amazing thing was with relievers, they're usually, unless you've got a really good one, like a really good closer, like I don't see them releasing Devin Williams anytime soon unless he just goes south. But
right.
Um,
Knebel,
like they did with Hader. As much as I hate to say that Hader trade probably ruined our season last year or the year before, one of the two.
Yep. Last year.
You could sense it was just going, downhill slowly for him because he just didn't look the same, but when you're looking at who Hader now, what he's doing as a Padre, he's doing decent. He's not doing great, but
Hader is the greatest closer in the league.
I can't, and I'm not gonna, as I say, I don't know enough about stats and stuff to say I could create a good argument for who's the. I still say Raleigh Fingers because he did, and all these guys that I mentioned as a relief pitcher, they came in close. Like Trevor Hoffman, you knew when you heard, when you'd hear Hell's Bells, that was you were done if you could at all help it. You couldn't do anything. But it's like Josh Hader, same thing. You knew when he came in, he was either going to close it down or totally just lose it for you. But Rodriguez, the same thing. It's just, for me, it's just Raleigh Fingers. As a kid, it was just Raleigh Fingers was so cool too. I got to meet Raleigh Fingers just by accident in the parking lot of County Stadium one time when I was I stayed in the stadium so that we wouldn't have to worry too much about getting trampled to death by people, and so it was cool because the guy was one of the nicest people I've ever met. As far as baseball players go, and I haven't met a lot, but I'd love to come to Milwaukee and just meet like a ton of Brewers, just because they, and the fact that the state is trying to keep them here, for as long as they can means, I'd also ultimately, if I ever have kids, I'd like to show my kids the Brewers. Because that's just
nothing like it. There is nothing like it. There is nothing.
Well, being at Miller Park, and I've done the national anthem the last 4 years, and there's nothing like being on that field when you've got stuff going on around you, and I still can't believe I was ever on that field. I also love there's so many stories that I could tell about getting onto that field and how we had to be careful of where we stepped because we couldn't step on the grass, which makes no sense when considering, 2/3 of the foul, like they'd let us in the foul area, but anything outside of that was not allowed to be. So we had to be very careful on where we were stepping. They didn't want us stepping on home plate, sure. So we had to be very careful, which I understand because that's a lot of work going in there. So, but yeah, so that's kind of my list.
I like your list. It's very heavy with the guys that were involved in this ring. And I think that's the great part about baseball is we all, a lot of the things that you talked about here, we all tie in nostalgia to. We talk, and I talk on the microphone on a regular basis and talk about all this stuff, and that's the fun part. I mean, you get to talk about these guys that you love for years and memories that you have of the game, and that's what we're celebrating. That's what we celebrate every day. I was reading and watching some content the other day about the Japanese professional baseball because one of my current favorite pitchers is playing over there, and I don't love him or hate him, Trevor Bauer.
Mm-hmm.
is over there right now, and it's kind of interesting because of the way that the guy creates content around himself in baseball. He actually is documenting how their game is so much bigger and so different than what we
Mm-hmm.
celebrate. Think about how fans like you and I celebrate, these players that we're talking about here today versus
Mm-hmm.
what celebrity a Shohei Otani is, or what
Mm-hmm.
celebrity, these guys that have come over from Ichiro. Ichiro, like, there's actually a picture of Ichiro and Otani shaking hands. I think he was bowing to Ichiro because it's that big to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you wish it was more like that here in the States, but at the same
Well, and
time, our game is
for
pretty big.
me, for when you talk about that, it's just they all have respect for the game, except I think in Japan, it's like a whole bigger deal because they I hate to say this because I don't want to sound like Americans are just this shallow kind of thing, but I always think that the Japanese always respect everything about it, um, where we as Americans somehow take it for granted that it's always just there, kind of thing. And I think um, Japanese value it more because they realize that you get these players that don't there are very few players that come along like Hoatani, and you gotta take them for you gotta give them the respect they deserve because they're doing stuff that most people 2/3 of the people can't do, and I love when people talk about Japanese baseball. I do, and a lot of my friends are to say that it's so cool to see that stuff like this. That the respect for baseball is, even though it goes overseas, it's still there. It's
Well,
not just a business. It's someone's memories and stuff like that. And
and it's
that's
it's such a bigger sport to everyone. We are also are very spoiled with the availability of hockey, soccer, basketball, football.
yeah,
We've got so many
yeah.
sports here. Where the
Hmm.
places like the Dominican, Cuba, they don't have everything that we have at their fingertips. You and I are professional wrestling fans. I
Hmm.
like the UFC every now and then, boxing, those kind of things. They don't have all those things at their fingertips. We forget that these other world or other countries don't have what America has in this ability, and
Hmm.
that's where I think we get a little spoiled because tonight I can be watching the Bucks play, and then tomorrow I can turn on the Brewers, and then
Hmm.
Saturday there's some football. You know what I mean? Like that's just how it is.
And that's and that for when my dad is no longer with us, and he hasn't been since 2002. My mom has picked up a lot of the sports he used to watch
Mhm.
because she knows that she enjoys it. My mom is becoming like the Brewers fanatic, which
So,
in my wildest dreams as a kid never thought that would be the case. But she's watching every day when she can. You, like she went on a trip to Spain and missed the whole first week of the season. That she was so anxious to get home and watch the Brewers because the first thing she said stepped in the door is, "How is the Brewers doing this week?" So she wanted to already know what was going on, and my mom is just amazes me on how big her fandom is for the Milwaukee Brewers, and it's the Brewers. She'll watch the Bucks and tolerate the Packers. I don't think she's much of a Packer fan as long as Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. We'll see how that goes. But she to me it epitomizes what it is to be a Brewers fan because she will sit and like she usually go to bed about 10:30 and she will spend time sitting up way past her bedtime watching the Brewers until like the ninth inning and then go to bed. You know, especially this whole road trip has just been just chaos for her sleeping her sleeping because she got to bed. She's gotten to bed at 11:30. Yeah, and when she usually goes to bed at about 10. So, but the fact that she's willing to stay up and root on a team, like her favorite player right now, I think is either Weimer or Trang. My mom is not, does not know who these players are until they come up with the Brewers, because she does not keep tabs on any players coming up. She always asks me about them.
Fair enough.
I know very little about the farming system. I'd love to know more about the Brewers farm system, but I just don't. It's not something I have, like my time is very limited. When I'm not sleeping, I'm working, and then when I'm, I've got so many things that I have to do that are just, I don't want to say more important, because the Brewers are important to me because they're so much fun to watch. And that's why this season so far has been such an enjoyable season for me, because no one expected it. No one expected the Brewers to be in first place with, and have they taken over Atlanta over first in the NL? Do we know?
No, they're tied.
They're tied. So they're tied because I was just like, I never thought I'd see that, especially with the number of rookies and the number of new players we got. It's been an enjoyable season so far, and I hope it continues all the way to the World Series if we can get there. So
we have the pitching. Let's just continue the ride.
Yeah, we have the pitching to do so. It's just who will stay injury free. Like, with Mitchell going on the IL right now, and I told my mom today, I said, the one thing that the Brewers have this year that they didn't have in past years as much is the fact that they have people who are able to step up and take over for those that that go down, like Mitchell going down. You have Frelick and all those players. Just a question for you, Eric: how long until you see Frelick coming up? Is Frelick getting called up anytime soon?
I don't think we see him, just because if they would have done it, they would have done it the other day when Garrett Mitchell went down. Unless they really expect the Garrett Mitchell injury to be that short, I don't see it. I just don't.
Mm-hmm. You think it's going to be a longer term injury than?
It's going to take something serious. It's going to take, first of all, they got to get rid of Tyrone Taylor one way or another, because they don't need him. They got to get rid of. They just got to get some space, and if we have a guy sidelined for the rest of the season, I think we'll see that. Plus, they still got to figure out where Weimer's going. If Weimer sticks up here, even through the because like the switch from the home to the road trip, and going later in games, that might have affected him. We don't know. He did show signs the other night, or the other afternoon, I should say, albeit he got pulled for Christian Yelich with the bases loaded. I didn't understand that move one bit, but I'm not in charge there, so it is what it is. It depends on what they do with Weimer. I don't see Garrett Mitchell going down at any point unless it's to rehab from this current injury. But other than that, I mean, I think we are where we are. I don't even see Keston Hurd getting another shot this season, to be honest.
Nope,
and I don't think he deserves it.
Well, especially with the way, I'm surprised they picked it back up, honestly. But
so how it works is basically you release him and they stay. If he doesn't get claimed, he stays in the organization. So that's how it came down.
So does that take into the effect that he doesn't have options going forward? So if he does get called up, he can't go back down, or how does that work? I don't.
Right. So he has no option to go back down at that point. So.
Which that's why I don't understand why they pick him back up. But it's just, for me, it's just he does. Maybe he'll get it together. I just hopefully, for his sake, he gets something that kicks him in the butt and says, not that he was doing horribly. He just there could have been, I remember when he was drafted. I'm like, who the heck is this? A lot of as I am with most of the draftees of pretty much the Brewers players, but
right,
unless but it's I hope he does well. I mean, given the fact that it's just
at this
it's
point,
sad
honestly,
to see with someone with so much potential being,
I think he's the flash in the pan, and I think he'll be gone. Corey Ray left us, thank God, finally. But I think
did we trade him?
No, we just out we released him.
Straight out released him? Okay.
So
I didn't hear what happened to him, so
it's
that's
a tough
why.
game. Some people make it and some people don't. So at the end of the day, if they gotta go, they gotta go. You can't hold everybody's hand and hope that they make it onto your roster forever. It is what it is. Some people are not meant to be baseball players. If I got drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers, I would have lasted about 2 minutes, and I wasn't even a collegiate level baseball player. So it's the same with the relievers.
Me on the other hand, I would have been on the injury list about 4 times in my, because that's just how injury prone I am. I mean, my knees are horrendous, and so yeah. But yeah,
all right.
So
well, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I'm gonna wrap her up real quick, and we'll just hang tight with me, okay?
Okay.
All right, guys, that was Richard talking some all-time Brewers. We have multiple off days coming and things like that, so we'll try and mix it up on these off days and do something different, have a different conversation. We do still have to work more on the NL Central Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, the Butcher has gone missing. We don't know. He's gone dark. Maybe he's on the dark web somewhere. If you find the Butcher, let me know. If you know where the Butcher is, I want to know, because he's missing and we have to find him. Butcher's Fresh Cuts every week, and we're missing the Butcher. I'm going to be flashing a picture. I'm going to rent some space on some milk cartons. We don't know where the Butcher is, so please help us find the Butcher. All right, guys, that's all I got. Thank you. Let's talk real quick. No, I dropped it yesterday. I talked about him yesterday, but we got Freddie Peralta on the hill tomorrow versus Pivot. Miley Whitlock, and then we got Burns Bello, and it looks like Burns is doing okay, so we should see him on Sunday. All right, guys, that's all I got tonight for the Miller Park Minute. Remember to follow us on all of your favorite social platforms. Like, subscribe, rate, review. We appreciate everything you guys do, and we appreciate you being here. And a special thank you goes to Richard for helping out with today's episode. All right, peace. See you in the next one. Go Brewers.